All right. Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, we'd like to give our praise, honor, glory to YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, QADASH. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of great millstone that taught us this truth, and salutations to the hopeful elect that's around the four corners of the globe. And the elect begins with the 144,000. Yahweh, who the world ignorantly calls God and Jehovah. BAHASHAM is in the name. YAHAWASHI, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. The RAWCHAA doctor, cheers the Holy Spirit. With the brothers of the great millstone Chicago camp. I'm the brother I want me join with.
Brother AHPARYAM.
Come back at you, brothers and sisters of that household of faith of the Hopeful Right Select with another lesson. And Lord, when we hope this lesson be edifying through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shai. Once again, we hope this lesson is edifying. You know, as you can see, the title, the tiny tops, referring to those people that's proclaiming to be us over there in the land of Israel today, man. You know, and it really stands back from a video, how ultimately, you had I believe it says 1,000 pastors and ultimately Christians, going over there to pay their respects to Israel, man. Which ultimately, the true people of Yahweh Shai, the true Israelites, will ultimately what? They wouldn't be respected by anybody, man. They would be under the curses. They wouldn't know who they were, which is a complete cut to those people over there in the land of Israel today, man. But we're just gonna go, jump straight into it.
You got something you want me to?
Grab Psalms the 83rd chapter, because ultimately the true Israelites, ultimately has enemies, man. That ultimately came up against us. Ultimately the true Israelites wouldn't be respected. The true Israelites will ultimately be down trying to, the poor, the low of the low,
Right. They wouldn't be tied in with Babylon the Great.
Yep.
Getting billions in funding,
Yep.
having a world-class military, But this Psalms 83:1. Keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have enemies, man. And it's going to list the enemies that we have ultimately, man. Because ultimately those small hats that's proclaiming to be us in the land of Israel today, ultimately now, everybody is coming up against them. But ultimately what? They control what? The world's wealth. They got allies by their side, man. America being a main ally,
Mm-hmm.
But you got it up.
Right. So they're joined onto the system that
Mm-hmm.
that the Lord is coming back to take down.
That's right.
It says, verse 3, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones.
Right. Who are the hidden ones, man? The true Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, and speckled birds, man. We are the hidden ones, man, because ultimately what? We had our nationality, our heritage stripped away from us, man. Ultimately talks about that, man. Our inheritance given up to aliens,
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately what? Our inheritance, our customs was given to what? To another people, man. Those being those small hats over there in the land of Israel today.
He oppressed a man in his heritage.
Yep.
Verse 4 says, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance.
Right. The true Israelites want to know who they are, man. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, because it talks about in the curses that we would be called what? A proverb and a bad word. African American, Mexican American, Cuban American, Native American. These are different proverbs and bad words that was given to our enemy, man. And ultimately what? We want to be colonized. Now in this time today, what? The Lord is restoring our heritage unto us. But ultimately what? We wouldn't know who we were, man, when we came over here in cargo slave, over here in on the transatlantic slave trade, man. We wouldn't know who we were. Our heritage would be stripped away from us.
There's verse 5. It says, for they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee.
Mm-hmm. They are confederate against thee, man. Ultimately what? These different nations came against the true Israelites and ultimately subdued us, man.
Yep. And then now it goes into the nations.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 6, the tabernacles of Edom.
Yep.
And the Ishmaelites.
Right, the so-called white man. You got this the so-called Arabs.
Of Moab.
Yeah, Chinese.
And the Hagarenes.
Yep.
Gebal and Ammon.
Ammon being the Japanese. So ultimately what you had the so-called white man, you had the Arabs, you had the so-called Chinese, you had the Japanese, you had the Africans. You had the Japhites. Yep.
It said so all of them, because it said that they have taken with one consent.
Yep.
So it says verse 7, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek
Yeah, Gabal, Ammon, and Amalek. And Amalek being what? The chief tribe of Esau Edom, man. The head tribe of Esau Edom, man. You know, the ones that's over there proclaiming to be us in the land of Israel today, man. You know, it's the tiny, the title says, man, the tiny tops, man. You know, because this is what ultimately Esau Edom does. He ultimately what? He takes everybody's heritage and proclaim them, you know, ultimately everybody's heritage as his own, man. You know, ultimately what? Them being the J-ish. You know, and when you look at that word J-ish, man, it's pertaining to it to be like. You know, they're trying to be like what? The Israelites, but they can't be, man. You know?
Because they don't have the spirit.
Yep.
It says, verse 8, Ashur is also joined with them.
Yep.
They have hope in the children of Lot, Selah.
You know, ultimately what? You know, these nations coming together to ultimately subdue the true Israelites, man. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, man. And ultimately, they gave us these different proverbs and bad words, so we wouldn't ultimately look for what our true nationality to know who we were, man.
Right.
You know,
our power.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I had that on deck too. You want me to read it?
BAHASHAM.
All right, this is Ezekiel 36. All right, and this is basically the cut to the small hats right here, because the Lord has your card. You know, the Lord has your number, and everything's in the scriptures. You know, everyone's identified in the scriptures. So Ezekiel 36:1. Also, thou son of man, prophesy unto the mountains of Israel, and say, ye mountains of Israel, hear the word of Yahweh. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because the enemy had said against you, aha.
Right. Who is that main enemy, man? The so-called white man, starting with Amalek, man.
Right. Which was the first one listed.
Yep.
In Psalms 83. And Amalek was listed.
Yep. Hey, Esau was missing what? Twice?
Twice.
Yep.
So it says, because the enemy had said against you, aha, even the ancient high places are ours in possession.
The ancient high places is ours in possession. What's the ancient high places, man? Israel, man.
Right.
It's in their
land.
Yep. That land is in their possession, man.
Starting with Jerusalem.
Yep. Hey, it talks about, let me grab that real quick. A bastard shall dwell in Ashdod.
I'm going to just read that again. Ezekiel 36:2. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because the enemy had said against you, aha, even the ancient high places are ours in possession.
Right. Our land is in their possession, man, because in Luke, it even talks about, you know, into the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled.
Exactly.
You know, so ultimately what? The main person over there on our land today is Amalek, man. You got other heathens scattered out that land also, but Amalek is the main ones that ultimately took possession of that land. Right. What happened during the Balfour Declaration? When ultimately what? That land was ultimately, you know, they got that land, you know, through what? Ill means, man.
Right. And, you know? And the verse 5 is going to go into it. The Balfour Declaration.
Yep.
With all the joy of their mind.
Yep.
But real quick, just if I could hit this, talking about Amalek, because the scripture says Amalek is the first of the nations, meaning he will be the richest, most powerful.
Yep.
You know,
and that's also a cut to ultimately, you know, 10 native people, because what? The true Israelites would be in a downtrodden state, poor. You know, ultimately the low of the low. Every single nation will look down upon them, man. You know. But you got
so it's very obvious when you read the scriptures. Numbers 24:20. And when he looked on Amalek, he took up his parable and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his latter end shall be that he shall perish forever.
Right, his latter end that he shall be perished forever, and that's for all Esau Edom, man. It was that Obadiah 1:18. You know, ultimately after that 1,000 years of captivity, they're going to be cut off, man, as a nation.
And when it says Amalek is the first of the nations, Ra'ashat. First, best, chief, choice part, you know, and they control all the resources.
Yep.
They control the media. They control the central banks.
Yeah, they control essentially the whole world.
Essentially,
you know,
right. The earth is given into the hands of the wicked.
I mean, even they have America in their possession, man. You know, you see, you know, who's in, you know, in these different cabinets. You know, ultimately, that's even, you know, joined onto Donald Trump. You have what? The tiny tops, you know, the small hats.
And all the positions of power.
That's right. You know, they control the news networks, man. You know, as the brother said, the central banks, you know, they control everything, man. What do the true Israelites ultimately own? Nothing, man. You know, if you look at Deuteronomy, what's that, 28 and 15, all the way down to 68, it lists the curses that the true Israelites will be under, man. You know, it talks about, you know, we shall not lend to him, but he shall lend to us, man.
Right. Who lends? Who controls the banks? Who lends?
Yeah, exactly right, man. Hey, you don't never see us. Have you ever seen a homeless so-called small hat, man? You know, have you ever seen, you know, a tiny top bag begging for money, man? You know, I got something for you real quick. I buy you. This is the book of Zephaniah 9:6. It says Zechariah 9:6. The water. It says, and a bastard shall dwell in Ashdod, and I will cut off the pride of the Philistines, right? And a bastard shall dwell in Ashdod, which is a city over there in Israel today, man. Right. You know, a bastard, you know, ultimately Esau Edom has no claim to that land, man. You know?
Let's just get this real quick, if I may.
Okay.
Luke 21:24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword. And it's talking about, you know, the Israelites in Jerusalem.
Yeah, 70 AD, you know, we fell away. You know, ultimately, you know, we went into captivity. You know, the main captivity ultimately being us coming over to the Americas, man. You know, ultimately we fell away as a people.
It says Luke 21:24, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive into all nations.
Yeah, led away captives is all nations, because our people are scattered everywhere, man. You know, and that would the main, you know, book of our people was, you know, scattered through the transatlantic slave trade, man. It happened to the Northern Kingdom first. You know, you had a lot of Northern Kingdom being shipped to Spain. You know, you had a lot of, you know, Southern Kingdom come over here to the Americas, South America. Our people were scattered.
It says, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled.
Right, trodden down, you know, by the Gentiles, man. Who are the Gentiles? These other heathen nations, man, beginning with Amalek. You know, you have to bow for a declaration, man. And as soon as Amalek had stepped foot on that land, it was a war. What was that? The first day?
Right.
You know, they had stepped in that land. Those Ishmaelites wanted them out of there as soon as they stepped foot in there. You know, and the Ishmaelites, they don't even have claim to that land, man.
And,
you know,
and that's another point too, because the scriptures say that they will, the nations will not learn war anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's the Isaiah, the 2nd chapter? I'm gonna grab it real quick.
So again, it's been what, nothing but nonstop war.
Mm-hmm.
All they can do is war. Their whole,
they was blessed with the sword.
Yeah, they were blessed with the sword. The whole state of Israel has just been in perpetual war.
Yep. This is the book of Isaiah 2:1, and it says, the word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of Yahweh's house shall be established in the top of the mountains. Ultimately, what? You know, that the government of Israel is going to be atop of all these other governments.
Right.
It says, Yahweh's house shall be established in the top of the mountains and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow into it. And all nations is not flowing into the land of Israel today. They're trying to destroy them, man.
And right, and they even have to import all their
exactly
all
right.
their resources and stuff.
Yeah, because he even talks about, you know, we shall suck up the what's that, the milk of the milk of the Gentiles.
Yeah, the force of the Gentiles.
Yeah, the force of the Gentiles, the water. You know, ultimately what? These nations are going to be, you know, willingly giving us things and possessions.
And that goes into their wealth.
Yeah, wealth.
The best, the cream of the crop of everything they're bringing into Israel.
Mm-hmm. And it says, verse 3, it says, and many people shall go and say, come ye and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of Yahweh of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways. And right, nobody is not trying to learn from the small hats, man. You know, they, like I said, they're trying to ultimately what? Get them out that land, man. Destroy them, man.
Right.
You know, because everywhere Amalek goes, man, he even talks about that in Malachi, man. They shall call him the border of wickedness, man. You know, and it says, I'm gonna start back at the top. Isaiah 2:3, it says, and many people shall go and say, come ye and let us go into the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of Yahweh of Jacob. And right, this is going to happen when what? The true Israelites is set back in that land, man. Right. It says, the power of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. And right, you know, Amalek don't even keep, you know, the ways of YAHAWASHI, man. You know, it talks about, you know, they're clean contrary, you know, to the ways of YAHAWASHI, man. You know,
right? So that's laughable to say that they're the people. That's laughable because it says the word of Yahweh will go forth from Jerusalem.
Yep. And
they don't even believe in the scriptures.
That's right. Yep. And it says, verse 4, it says, and he shall judge among the nations and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. And Bible Shop, you can grab what's that, Jeremiah 16:14, because it talks about how the true Israelites is going to be set in that land, man. We're not going to go over that by ships, and when the Israelites is ultimately set in that land, man, there's not going to be any more war. You know, because what we're seeing right now, man, everything that's happening right now, because it even talks about the small has the least of the flock shall draw them out. You know, they're going to be the main ones ultimately leading everybody towards the third world's war. And it's war right now, man, because ultimately when the true Israelites get back in that land, there's not going to be any more war, you know? Yeah. So ultimately when the true Israelites are set back in that land, there's not going to be any more war. You know, we're going to live in harmony, man. But that's not happening right now. What is the small hats ultimately doing? You know, ultimately what? They picking with Ishmael, you know, ultimately picking with these different nations, man. And ultimately what? They're causing different conflicts over there in the so-called Middle East, man.
Yeah, the least of the flock shall draw them out.
Yep.
And they even got something called the Samson option, which means if they're going to lose, they're just going to go nuclear.
Yeah. Yep.
You know?
And they was trying to have peace talks with that, what, Iran? And ultimately when that, you know, when that ceasefire ultimately did happen, what happened immediately after?
Every time.
Yeah.
And you can look up how many ceasefires they broke. It's like, obviously it's every single one, just like they broke every treaty in the Americas.
The Native Americans.
They break every ceasefire. Like they just can't stop war.
Hey, which is a cut to those, Edomites being the people, man. You know, those Amalekites, you know, proclaiming to be us. You know, it talks about the controversy of Zion, man. You know, who are the true people of YAHAWASHI, you know? Right. And ultimately you have the everyday Joe Schmo speaking against the small hats, man. You got, you know, regular people saying that they're not the people, man. You know?
You said, you wanted
Jeremiah 16:14 because it ultimately proves, you know, how ultimately what the true Israelites is going to come back into that land.
It says Jeremiah 16:14, therefore behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that it shall no more be said, Yahweh liveth, that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt.
Right, because if you know anything about history, that ultimately what ancient Egypt was the first captivity of the Israelites, man. You know how ultimately what the Lord delivered, Yahweh used Moses to ultimately what to deliver the Israelites. You know, all the Israelites walked out out of Egypt, man, collectively, you know. Right. But let's continue.
So it says it's no more going to be said that.
Because this deliverance is going to eclipse that of ancient Egypt.
Verse 15. But Yahweh liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north and from all the lands whither he had driven them. And I will bring them again into their land, and I gave unto their fathers.
Right. So the true people of YAHAWASHI is not going to take a boat over there to the land of Israel, man, and ultimately, establish the land of Israel. No, the Lord is going to personally, take his people by the way of the chariots, what the world ignorantly calls UFOs, and ultimately and plant them back in that land. Man.
That's another great point. Yeah, we still got
this most of that.
Yeah. So back to Ezekiel 36. I'm gonna just read 3 again. Therefore prophesy and say, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because they have made you desolate and swallowed you up on every side, that ye might be a possession unto the residue of the heathen, and ye are taken up in the lips of talkers and are an infamy of the people.
Right, we're infamy to the people, because just look at the state of Jake, man. Jake is, you look at Jake, how bugged out Jake is, because of the curses, man, talking to themselves, smitten with madness, man. And ultimately, as you can read it, what's that, Lamentations 2:15, they clap their hands and say, we have swallowed her up, we have found, we have seen it, man. So ultimately, what the true Israelites will be in a downtrodden state, man, under their enemies, man,
Verse 5, therefore thus saith the Lord Yahweh, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen and against all Idumea, which is Edom.
That's a Greek way of saying Edom.
Right, so against all Idumea, which have what? Which have appointed my land into their possession, with the joy of all their heart, with the spiteful minds to cast it out for a prey.
Right, exactly right, man. Going back to that, what's that, Zechariah, a bastard shall dwell in Ashdod, man. Ultimately what? They don't fit none of the prophecies, how ultimately what, how the true Israelites will come back to that land. Ultimately what? Going back to that Luke, the brother read earlier, man, shall be trodden down, with the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. The Lord is going to flush those tiny tops out that land, man, because ultimately what? Their time is being fulfilled right now, man,
Right. So the scripture's telling you that Idumea has appointed the Holy Land into their possession. And it says, with all the joy of their heart. See how it says with all the joy of their heart? Okay. Now when you go to the Balfour Declaration, how does it begin? I have much pleasure in conveying to you. Right. This is the dear Lord Rothschild. I have much pleasure in conveying to you. You know, basically letting them know that they've set up the Zionist state. So it said, with all the joy of their heart. See, so it's just a spiritual, observation.
Yep. I got a quick one for you, real quick, brother. Or actually, you could finish that out. I buy you.
This Ezekiel 36:6. Prophesy therefore concerning the land of Israel, and say unto the mountains, and to the hills, to the rivers, and to the valleys, thus saith the Lord Yahweh. Behold, I have spoken in my jealousy and in my fury, because ye have borne the shame of the heathen. Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, I have lifted up mine hand. Surely the heathen that are about you, they shall bear their shame.
Right. So ultimately, everything that these heathens have done to us is going to come back on them, man. You know? Let me actually grab this real quick. This is it was another one I was thinking about, but I'm gonna grab this one real quick. This is the book of Deuteronomy 33:28. It says, Israel then shall dwell in safety alone. The fountain of Jacob shall be upon the land of corn and the wine. Also his heaven shall drop down dew. When it says Israel then shall dwell in safety alone, meaning we don't have to worry about, these heathens coming up against us and taking us down, man. Which is a cut to those small has proclaimed to be us, because everybody's after they
trying to take them down.
And it says, verse 29, it says, happy art thou, O Israel, who is like unto thee, O people saved by Yahweh, the shield of thy help, and who is the sword of thy excellency. And thy enemies shall be found liars unto thee, and thou shalt tread upon their high places, right? Because ultimately what? The Lord is exposing Esau, Edom, man. Even the top tribe, starting with the top tribe, man, Amalek, man. The Lord is exposing this devil. What's that, Isaiah 47? The skirts are being lifted up. Everybody is seeing this devil for who he truly is. Everybody is calling this devil out, that he's not the people, that he's ultimately he ultimately got everything by ill means, right? Rape, robbery, and murder, man. So everybody is coming up against this damn devil, and everybody's finding out that he's a damn liar, man.
Hey, I will have war with Amalek
from generation to generation. Yep. And exactly right. It was another one.
I got a quick one. Real quick. Psalms 94. I'm gonna just start at 12. Psalms 94:12. Blessed is the man whom thou chasteneth, O Yahweh, and teachest him out of thy law. And it says also, it is a good thing that I have been afflicted, so that I can learn thy statutes. Yeah. So, we're learning the statutes while the enemies, reign over us. Yeah. It says that thou mayest give him rest from the days of adversity, until the pit be digged for the wicked. And we're seeing that pit be digged right now.
Yep. And they're about to fall right into it.
Verse 14. For Yahweh will not cast off his people, neither will he forsake his inheritance.
Right. The Lord is not going to cast off the Israelites, man. The Lord is, you think the Lord, all of a sudden, just, changed his mind. It ultimately talks about that. The Lord doesn't change, man. The Lord is not going to give his, inheritance to another people, man. But you had some more to everybody. That was it.
Yeah, that was it.
I got one real quick. This is the book of Psalms 50:16. It says, but unto the wicked, Yahweh said, what hast thou to do to declare my statutes, or that thou shouldest take my covenant in thy mouth? Because ultimately what? These heathens, starting with Amalek, has nothing to do with our customs, man. They ultimately took it for themselves, but they don't follow any, thing from the scriptures, man. They don't follow anything that's ultimately set forth, man. It says, verse 17, it says, seeing thou hatest instruction and castest my words behind thee. And Esau Edom being the wicked, that's exactly what he does, man. He's clean contrary, as the scriptures say, man. So he ultimately, opposed himself to be, this righteous people, proclaiming himself to be the Israelites. But ultimately, what? All that facade is being broken down, man.
The truth, which was so long without fruit, is being declared.
That's right.
I got. You got more?
Oh, that was pretty much the point. What you got, brother?
It's Psalms 61:5. For thou, O God, hast heard my vows. Thou hast given me the heritage of those that fear thy name.
Yeah, those that gave me the heritage of those that fear thy name.
And they don't fear them. They don't, like we're just going into, they don't fear the name of YAHAWASHI. And they don't care about their true heritage. Or like the hopeful elect is waking up to their true heritage.
Yep.
You know, and seeking after it. You know,
Ezekiel the 37th chapter. That's another big one right there, man. You know, ultimately what the dry bones. You know, ultimately what the Lord's people, the true Israelites, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, we are working by this word.
Bro, they don't even talk about the tribes.
Yeah, well, Levi.
Like, that's folly, bro. They talk about 2 tribes.
What's that? Judah and Levi.
That's it. Judah and sometimes Levi. Levi.
They don't even speak about the northern kingdom. You know,
right? So that's our heritage, though.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly, they don't have our heritage, bro. They don't have a zeal for it.
Let me grab this real quick. This is
yeah, they don't have a zeal for the law of Yahweh, man. Like how we have a zeal for the law of our Father. They don't have that.
I got you right here. This is the book of Lamentations 5:2. I'm gonna just get straight to the point. Lamentations 5:2. It says, "Our inheritance is turned to strangers, our houses to aliens." Right. So ultimately, what they proclaim that land doing a Balfour Declaration, and ultimately, ever since, man, you know, they've been proclaiming to be us, man. You know,
our inheritance is turned to strangers.
Mm-hmm. So ultimately, individuals that have nothing to do with our customs, our heritage, the law, statutes, and commandments, you know, they have nothing to do with it, man. But they're ultimately what they took it in their mouth and they proclaim that as their own, man.
Let me see.
Get it off whatever you got up.
Yeah, that was pretty much it.
Okay. Yeah, just something quick, you know, we just wanted to dive into, man. Hey, because ultimately what these small has these tiny tops is ultimately, you know, it's being revealed to who they truly are, man. You know, they're gonna, especially in the kingdom, man, they're gonna proudly wear Esau Edom, man. You know, being an Edomite, you know. And ultimately, what we're coming into a time where our heritage is being turned back unto us, man.
That's right.
And Amalek is being exposed for the devil he truly is, man. So with that being said, we hope this lesson was edifying. When the end of it, all praise, honor, and glory to
YAHAWAH,
BAHASHAM,
YAHAWASHI,
BAHASHAM, QADASH. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of great millstone that taught us this truth, and salutations to the hopeful elect that's around the four corners of the globe. Lord, we hope this lesson was edifying. Till next time, Kwame YASHARAHLA, Shalom and Abad Baba.
Shalom, Abad Baba.